Hello. It's great to see this many people in this room. Thanks for being here. My name's Ron Strange. Reverend Morales asked me to do this reading for you. I have a story. It's about a man going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. And he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. And then he put the man on his own donkey and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." Time for a meditation on that, or whatever you please. I was told to keep this introduction short by Reverend Morales, and he said, "Whatever you do, don't mention the Nobel Prize." So I won't do that, but I'll encourage you to talk to him afterwards. Reverend Morales, we are so happy to have him here today. He's a neighbor from Squim. And he was a senior minister for the Jefferson Unitarian Church in northwestern Denver, Aurora area in the early 2000s. He was the president of the UUA from 2009 to 2017. He was known for his unrelenting efforts to increase Unitarian Universalist presence and involvement on issues such as marriage equality, racial justice, immigration, and climate change. He was arrested twice for his convictions. Today, he will address the question, why has liberal religion failed to meet the needs and meaning for meaning and community?
Thank you, Rob. It's good to be with you. Hearing assistance. Vice.
I'm sorry.
I've been joking around the house that I hoped that preaching was like riding a bicycle, and that years can go by and you never really, hopefully, forget how, because this is the first time I've stepped up to the pulpit in more than 7 years. Today I want to talk about 3 major trends in American culture. The first trend is the rise in what have been called deaths of despair. Those are deaths from suicide, drug overdoses, and alcohol abuse. The second trend is the epidemic of loneliness that is so pervasive that it's considered a public health issue now. And the third big trend is the decline of religious participation and identification. Now, these three trends, deaths of despair, loneliness, decline of religion, are usually discussed separately, but I think they're deeply connected. And as I don't want to add to the despair of those grim areas, I'll offer a few ideas where I think we might do to bring more love and purpose and community in. But first, let's talk about me. Or more specifically, I want to look at my journey in Unitarian Universalism alongside these trends of cultural despair, isolation, and religious decline. Because I believe there's some insights and lessons from that journey. When I went to seminary almost 30 years ago, I was filled with enthusiasm and a sense of possibility. I thought Unitarian Universalism had limitless potential. I couldn't believe we were such a tiny denomination. I'd come from a career in community journalism. One of my seminary classmates and close friend had arrived from a successful career in sales in corporate America. We were both amazed at how terrible our faith was at communication and outreach. And back then, seminary students were allowed to propose and teach a course in seminary. So together we proposed a course called Evangelism in the Liberal Church. And in that seminar, we explored a number of ideas for getting our message out. After our seminary, I became a minister, as you heard, of the church in the Denver area. And I was convinced that congregation had huge potential. And I was full of ideas about how to do outreach. First, though, I had to get settled in as the new minister. So my ideas for sophisticated outreach, like targeted database direct mail and such, would have to be postponed for a while. This was pre-big internet days. Well, we never did implement any of my clever ideas. However, in the 8 years, that congregation grew from 400 members to just under 800 members. We became the 12th largest congregation in the association. So what happened? It all began with my standing outside greeting people as they arrived for Sunday services. I tried to get back on that bicycle a little bit before this service. Greeted some of you. It was good to do that. I decided that as a new minister, I really should force myself to greet people and meet members of the congregation. After a few months, I realized that I was saying hello not only to those who attended regularly, but to a lot of people I was seeing for the first time. We were getting a surprising number of visitors. And in a discussion with the membership committee, we decided to take a careful look at what actually happened to the first-time visitors. Now, like most congregations, we thought we were the friendliest people on the planet. So members of the committee decided to be like little anthropologists and sit sort of in the background and observe from a distance and track what actually happened. We were appalled. We were ashamed. Visitors were often ignored, left standing awkwardly alone, not sure what to do. We also realized that the number of visitors was a lot higher than we thought. So I came up with a new motto: repel fewer visitors. As I looked at our congregation's membership history, I've been trained in the social sciences, so I love data. I saw that we'd been adding an average of 50 new members a year for the previous 20 years. We'd also been losing 50 members a year for the previous 20 years, so the membership had been just about perfectly flat. So we implemented a lot of common sense practices, some of which you do, about inviting people to introduce themselves, to try to be as hospitable as we thought we already were, but weren't. The congregation also worked hard at doing everything a little better, from religious education to music to social action. Funny thing, the number of people joining went up a bit. The number of people drifting away went down. We climbed to 500 members, and then 600, then 700 and beyond. And we were approaching, as I said, 800 members when I became UUA president. Most importantly, when we paid more attention to guests, when we made a kind of spiritual discipline of reaching out beyond our inner circle, it changed us. We became more aware, more sensitive, more empathetic, more alive. And we made some wonderful new friends, and we grew stronger as a congregation. Oh, and we did no marketing whatsoever. Zip, nothing. It took me a while to see what was staring me in the face, a pattern that's been too often repeated. There's an irrepressible hunger for religious community out there, a desire for deep, lasting relationships, for affirming together what is precious and sacred in life. Human beings not only need deep community, they'll actively seek it. We all want and need deep connection, and yet, as a culture, as a society, we have inadvertently created a society that systematically tears relationships apart. Loneliness in America has spiked to the point where it is now widely considered a public health problem. Just under half, 47%, of Americans report feeling lonely, and that number has doubled in a generation. Single-person households, it's a household with one person, are now almost a third of American households, up from just 7% in the 1940s. So there's been a steady increase. Human beings are social creatures who need close relationships, the way we need food and shelter. A former Surgeon General has called loneliness an epidemic in America. Health experts tell us that the effects of loneliness are about the equivalent of being obese or smoking 15 cigarettes a day in the body. And the irony here is staggering. It has never been easier technologically to stay in touch with people. Yet Americans today are probably the loneliest people who have ever lived. Ponder that a moment. The loneliest people who have ever lived. Americans are killing themselves by suicide, alcohol, and drug overdoses in record numbers. More than 400 Americans die every day from what are now called deaths of despair. That's about 150,000 a year. It's 4 times as high as the number who die in traffic accidents. Organized religion is in a tailspin. Christianity, which once included 90% of Americans, is declining rapidly, particularly among the young. The same is true for Judaism. Muslims, Hindus, and a few others seem to be faring better, but their national numbers are quite low. The drop is across the board, affecting Catholics and evangelical Christians, as well as more mainline and religiously liberal groups, like the United Church of Christ, Unitarian Universalists, Reformed Jews, and the like. People who do not identify with any religion, which are called by researchers the nuns, as in none of the above, not the ones with the habit, the nuns. The nuns are now the largest religious group in America. How's that for irony? No religion is now America's largest religion. Congregations once helped give millions of people a sense of meaning, a sense of place, purpose, belonging. They provided a place for developing deep, lasting, and loving relationships. The common thread, I believe, among the rise of deaths of despair, the dramatic increase in loneliness, and the decline of religion is that they are all symptoms of profound disconnection. Disconnection from one another, disconnection from a shared history, disconnection from shared aspirations, disconnection from institutions that help shape meaning and purpose. And the tragedy of liberal religion is that although its worldview, our worldview, and values are in harmony with millions upon millions of people, and yet we have failed to engage. We accept racial and cultural diversity, we accept science and what it teaches about the universe and the evolution of life and the cosmos. Our values of compassion and our desire for social justice are widely shared, and yet we're in steady, relentless decline. It doesn't have to be this way. But we can't keep doing what we've always done and hope that results will miraculously change. We religious liberals don't believe in miracles, but we rely on them. I don't believe that the goal is to grow liberal congregations. The goal is to create the kind of loving, life-saving, and life-enhancing spiritual homes we so deeply need and desire. Growth isn't the goal. However, membership numbers are one key measure of how we're doing in creating a religious home. If we meet people's deepest needs, we can't help but grow. The spiritual disease of our time is disconnection. Disconnection, as I've said, from one another, from ourselves, from a purpose beyond ourselves. The myth of rugged individualism promises freedom. In practice, it often means living with loneliness and dying alone. As the old song says, sometimes freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. If disconnection is a disease, the cure is reconnection. In the business world, there's an often repeated admonition that you have to understand what business you're really in, because it's easy to get focused on the wrong thing. For example, for us, and some would consider this heresy, we are not primarily in the social justice business. Of course, if we're compassionate, if we love our neighbors as we love ourselves, we will work for all kinds of justice, environmental, racial, economic, for gender equality, and all of the rest. However, our primary task, the great challenge of our time, is to reconnect people. Disconnection is literally killing us. It is destroying what is good and sacred in life. We need to reconnect to our innermost selves, to one another, reconnect to this amazing cosmos that gives us birth and sustains us. When we reconnect, we feel loved. We sense we're part of something that's beautiful and that transcends us and that transcends even our lives. So how do we go about reconnecting? How do we do it in an era that pulls us apart. We begin with where we are, right here, right now. We build on the love that is here and that surrounds us. We nurture the relationships we have. It takes effort and intention. It's so easy to neglect relationships. We listen carefully, with an open mind and an open heart, to the concerns of our neighbors. Nurturing the relationships we have is a start, but it's not enough. There's a temptation, especially in a congregation, to turn inward. I've often said that if liberal religion dies, it will be because it clubbed itself to death, as in being a club. The essence of love, the essence of compassion, is a desire to reach out. Reaching out is a spiritual practice. It takes discipline and effort. And like any good spiritual practice, reaching out changes us. If we're going to help heal our world, we religious liberals need to try some new ways of creating community. Clearly, the traditional congregational model works well for many, but church has become a bad brand for millions. They associate church with bigotry, ignorance, and hypocrisy. We confront what's called a wicked problem. Wicked doesn't mean evil, but rather that the problem is complicated and there's no known solution. The only way to solve a wicked problem is to study it carefully, create possible solutions, try them on a small scale, learn from what works and what doesn't, and adjust. And I learned another important lesson in my time as a parish minister and on the national staff. Again, in retrospect, it should have been obvious. And the lesson is this: how we do something is perhaps more important than what we do. We can greet someone with a cold, perfunctory hello, or we can greet them with a warm smile. We can offer to help someone with an air of condescension, or we can try to create a true partnership. So the most important things we can do to resist the tide of loneliness and despair are to open our hearts, reach out, and then follow our hearts. There is no clever and surefire 10-point plan. We have to take some risks. I've been haunted recently by that parable of the Good Samaritan that Ron read, thankfully. As a former minister and religious leader, I find it especially disturbing that the two people who walked past the beaten man were religious leaders. I have this image of a self-righteous religious person passing by a half-dead man while on his way to protest some injustice. I wonder how many times I've been that heartless and clueless religious leader. The truth is, it's a lot easier to protest injustice than to care for a neighbor. For many religious liberals, social action is our comfort zone. The tragedy of liberal religion is that we have too often walked by. The lonely, beaten, suffering, and despairing are all around us. They are our neighbors, and we are their neighbors. Love reaches out. Love drives away loneliness, and love creates hope and joy where there was despair. We live in an age of disconnection, and so our challenge is to reconnect. And I know we can do this because I have seen it, I have witnessed it again and again in many places. We reconnect one relationship at a time. may you and I together reach out and help heal a hurting world. Amen.
What the world